From the beginning, energy came from nature. In the Pacific, as elsewhere in the world, the use of nature's energy enabled people to survive and to flourish. Today, Pacific Islanders are learning that energy from nature may also be their hope for a better future.
Beginning in the 1960s, concerns worldwide began to grow about the pollution caused by petroleum-based products. The long-term effects of oil spilled in the ocean while transporting the fuel or seeping into the soil after its use became a great worry to those concerned with the environment and health, especially in the Pacific Islands, where resources are so limited and the coastal environment so fragile. The potential for disaster was frightening.
The situation was called the greenhouse effect because the way the gases were trapped in the Earth's atmosphere was similar to the way the sun's rays are trapped in a greenhouse to keep plants warm. This greenhouse effect was brought on by large amounts of carbon dioxide and nitrous oxide being released into the atmosphere during years and years of burning fossil fuels, mainly by the larger metropolitan countries. And just like a greenhouse, temperatures around the world began to rise as a result of these trapped gases. Global warming has been blamed for many environmental problems in recent years. Sea level rise is of particular concern in the Pacific Islands, where many countries are very low-lying. But the island countries' reliance on fossil fuels was not just an environmental concern. It was an economic concern too, because island countries relied on a steady supply of fossil fuels to assist in the development of their growing economies.
The lack of control became painfully obvious in 1973 with the oil embargo. Suddenly, the supply of oil on the world market was uncertain. Prices skyrocketed. With a disruption in the supply of oil, countries in the Pacific and throughout the world had to look at other sources of energy, renewable sources of energy. Renewable energy is a source of energy that nature replenishes. For that reason, the long-term benefits are obvious. The source of the energy is provided by nature. It is only the technology to harness this energy that will cost money. Renewable energy sources include wind, sunlight, waves, biogas, thermal energy, and biomass or firewood.
If you go to the future and look back, in 100 years, around the world, renewable energy sources have to be more used because conventional sources of energy will be running out.
The primary need for energy in the Pacific Islands is to increase island people's access to electricity.
So in order for them to improve their education, to improve sources of income, to create employment, better health and communication facilities, they must have electricity. And this electricity is most cost-effectively supplied by renewable energy.
Many different forms of renewable energies were introduced in the Pacific. The islands became a kind of laboratory for the developed world to see if renewable energy sources would work. Another form of renewable energy used in the Pacific is biogas, which uses the excrement from pigs or other animals in a sealed chamber to produce methane gas. This methane gas can then power a gas stove for cooking. Most of the main renewable energy sources available today are in use in the Pacific or are planned for use here. These include solar energy from photovoltaic electricity generation, solar water pumps for pumping water, solar water heating, wind turbines to generate electricity, or coconut and other oils for use in diesel engines. This can be used for transportation or running diesel generators. Wave energy is another source that is still experimental in the Pacific. Ocean thermal energy conversion, or OTEC, is another new energy source. And of course, hydropower plants that can run from an average stream to hydropower projects on a much larger scale.
But implementing projects that would work in the difficult conditions in the islands was not always easy. Early experiments in solar energy, for example, met with mixed success.
Well, the initial experience was not very good because as I say, the technology was not well understood, and many of the components had relatively short life, particularly batteries and electronics. The very early systems, they didn't last long enough to require any maintenance.
Gradually, the technology improved, and yet other problems began to surface as new renewable energy projects were introduced.
As the systems began to be more reliable and the components more appropriate for the Pacific environment, it became clear that the long-term problem was going to be inability to take care of the systems in the long term.
These early experiments led to a realization that there was more to making these systems work than just getting the technology right. The Pacific island country of Samoa has two main islands with just over 1,000 square miles of land. Like other island countries, Samoa's primary energy need was for electricity. And like other countries, much of its national economy was spent purchasing fossil fuels. With such a high fuel bill for the country, Samoa's leaders looked beyond fossil fuel sources of energy and began to examine renewable sources of energy. Because of its mountainous geography and plentiful rainfall, the capital island of Upolu was well suited for a medium-scale hydro project. A dam was set up in Awhalilo to create a hydroelectric power plant. This renewable energy project came online in 1993. Because of the lower requirements for diesel, less money travels out of the country, and this allows the government to increase the availability of electricity.
The government is very much committed to providing electricity to every household, and we do have a very active rural electrification program, which is intended to provide electricity for 100% of the population.
Currently, nearly 95% of the population have access to electricity. But the government is planning to introduce another hydro project, this time on the island of Savai'i. But large-scale hydro projects do not come cheaply. They require a large amount of funding up front, even before the first kilowatt of electricity is ever produced.
Despite the large initial setup costs for hydro projects, the government of Samoa sees this renewable energy source as a long-term solution for its growing energy needs.
If we can generate our electricity 100% from hydro, it will certainly reduce the burden on the foreign exchange required to purchase imported petroleum.
Solar energy and wind power also have potential in Samoa. Currently, solar power is used mainly for private homes for hot water and in more remote areas for radio repeating stations. The electric company also feels that wind has potential for future development as an energy source. But for a renewable energy source to be viable, it must be commercially viable. Its purchase cost must be weighed against its operating cost to see how cost efficient it will be.
The island republic of Kiribati is one of the Pacific's small atoll countries. Approximately 85,000 people are scattered across 33 islands. On the main island of Tarawa, electricity is primarily powered by diesel generation. Because of population growth and other increases in demand, the need for electricity grows every year.
The yearly trend growth trend is averaged about 5 to 6% per annum.
The Kiribati government recognized that development in the outer islands was in many ways tied to the regular supply of electricity. And so in 1984, government established the Solar Energy Company. But the early experiences of the company involved a number of problems.
When it was first established, we just sell out solar equipment to the people in the outer islands. And they just install their own system and they maintain it. But because they are not fully aware of the technology, we found that in most cases, these systems didn't last long.
The frequent failures of their solar systems led people on the outer islands to turn back to the small diesel generators for their electricity needs. The Solar Energy Company realized that if solar energy was going to work, it had to change its approach. The company decided to hire and train local field technicians. Technicians hired live in the areas where the solar project was implemented. These technicians not only assisted with the setup of the solar lighting systems, they also regularly maintained them.
What we've been trying to do here is we try to give the service to the people in the outer islands, and at the same time we give the required backup service. And you see in Kiribati, most of the rural people, they cannot afford to own a solar system. And our program is one way of enabling them to own a solar system.
To ensure that the system was sustainable, a regular fee of $9 a month was charged to outer island users. In the beginning, users only had access to electric lighting in the evenings. Gradually, though, demand for electricity grew, and for an extra $1 a month, a power point was added that could run a radio as well. The introduction of this reliable source of electricity in the outer islands quickly changed the lifestyle of the people.
Since after the implementation of the rural electrification project in Kiribati, we observed that the people's lives have changed for the better. The majority of the population on the outer islands in Kiribati, what they really need is just basic lighting and probably a radio.
Rural schools and its students also benefit from the availability of solar-powered lighting. Students are able to study longer, and other activities can also be held in the school. Rural health centers are also benefiting from solar power. The solar energy provides power for lighting and for the running of a small refrigerator, which is used to store perishable vaccines. In this way, solar power provides the means for the regular immunization of children in the rural areas. Solar panels are also used to power remote radio telephone sites. This makes it much easier for rural people to stay in communication. And this again increases their opportunities for income-generating activities. Why has Kiribati's Solar Energy Company worked, where in other island countries solar power projects have floundered?
The local people are leading the project rather than the foreign consultants. Our staff are very well trained, but they only need some kind of assistance in how to make the operation more efficient.
Despite their self-reliance in operating the solar project, Kiribati still needs financial assistance in expanding their current setup. Because of the high initial costs for establishing renewable energy projects, international donors are often sought to provide the necessary startup funds. In Kiribati, the European Union provided the necessary funds for the existing project. It seems that the EU is satisfied that the initial project was a success.
Because of this, we have get more fundings from the European Union for the installation of 1,500 solar home systems and 133 manebas systems for the village manebas.
The new EU project will increase the number of rural solar systems tenfold. Despite this increase, there is still more demand than can be met. By parliamentary decision, the Solar Energy Company is the supplier of electricity only to the outer islands. But in Kiribati's future, there may be even more solar-powered electricity.
The largest country in the Pacific in both population and land mass is Papua New Guinea. More of its nearly 5 million people live in rural areas, either in the mountainous interior or in the island groups to the east. Although it is one of the only Pacific Island countries with its own oil reserves, the supply of energy still remains one of its basic development concerns. As in other island countries, the regular and cost-effective supply of electricity remains one of its primary energy goals. In the rural areas, only about 5 to 7% of the rural population currently have access to electricity. Part of the difficulty in delivering power to these people is the rugged isolation of rural communities. As in the smaller Pacific Island countries, renewable energy sources seemed best suited to address PNG's energy needs.
What we are doing is basically for rural people. And we're looking at these resources to reach the people in a big way. There's a lot of potential for renewable energy, especially in hydro, solar, wind, ocean thermal, OTEC.
Another example of how renewable energy has helped in the rural areas is in the area of education. At the Kivoli Primary School in the Highlands outside Port Moresby, a hybrid system was set up. Hybrid means using more than one method of energy generation. In this case, wind turbines and solar panels provide an independent supply of power to a remote rural school.
Yeah, better water. Oh,
I've got that opportunity to operate my photocopy machine, and even my little lights for my teachers in their residential houses, even provide my own classroom lights too at night.
Having electric lights increases the students' abilities to study for national exams. It also allows the teachers to prepare for the next day's work and to assist those students who need special assistance after hours. And yet, once again, it is not the equipment that is affecting the success of renewable energy projects, but a lack of awareness of how the equipment works.
Awareness raising is seen as a priority in making PNG's renewable energy projects work. Even at university level, academics recognize that education in renewable energy is essential for PNG's future. At the University of Papua New Guinea in Port Moresby, renewable energy is still a relatively new topic on the curriculum. PNG is rich with resources and potential, but it is also hampered by difficult challenges mainly brought on by a lack of awareness by rural people about the importance of renewable energy. And yet, efforts in PNG move forward, guided by those who recognize the fact that renewable energy must be introduced now before fossil fuels run out or increase even more in price.
Another of the Pacific's smaller island countries, the Cook Islands, comprises only 93 square miles, spread over dozens of small islands. The majority of the country's 20,000 people live on the capital island of Rarotonga. Unlike many of its less developed neighbours, most Cook Islanders have access to electricity. Another quite unique energy source is also being used in the Cook Islands: coconut oil. The oil can actually be used as a fuel in a normal diesel engine.
You can run a tractor, you can run a car, an outboard motor. It's made for diesel fuel. You can replace it with coconut oil without doing anything to it. I don't think most people wouldn't notice the difference, except it has this beautiful aroma that comes off. When I first started it, people come around to say, "What you cooking?"
Nearly all Pacific Island countries have a huge supply of available coconuts. The fact that a diesel engine runs on coconut oil shows exciting possibilities for the future of renewable energy in the Pacific. If done in a large scale, the use of coconut oil as a fuel can decrease a country's dependency on fossil fuels. Another energy use Tom found for coconut oil is the running of generators to power his hydroponics project. This hydroponics project, powered by electricity but fueled by coconut oil, is an example of how renewable energy can help improve living standards in the islands. It's another ray of hope for the future.
With a population base of nearly 800,000, Fiji is the Pacific's second largest country. Most of the population is centered on the two main islands, which take up most of Fiji's 7,000 square miles of land. As in the rest of the Pacific, Fiji has moved into renewable sources of energy due to the high cost of fossil fuels. In the early 1980s, Fiji began operating a medium-sized hydroelectric facility at Monasavu in the center of the island.
While Fiji's electricity authority deals with large-scale electricity supply, the government's Department of Energy is initiating smaller community projects that, for the most part, involve renewable energy. In the village of Bukuya, deep in the interior of Fiji's main island, a smaller hydroelectric project provides electricity for over 200 homes. The project shows that, even with relatively little water flow, a hydroelectric project can efficiently provide power for rural communities.
The
majority of the work done here today is powered by electricity. For example, washing, ironing, publication, photocopies. This has been a great help in the upgrade of our daily lives.
Although the system was funded by the Chinese government, the project is run as a cooperative. Income collected from users of the power is put back into the maintenance and upgrading of the system. The electricity produced provides lighting for homes and the school, as well as for TVs and other minor power uses. In Fiji's rural areas, more renewable energy projects like those in Bukuya are being implemented to improve the lives of rural people. In Fiji and other island countries, it is in the rural areas where people are most in need of the development benefits that electricity can bring.
At the national level, the Fiji Electricity Authority appears very positive about increasing the use of renewable energy in Fiji's future.
FEA, the board and the vision is very passionate that in 10 years' time, we will be a fundamentally renewable energy company. Now, I'm very passionate about this. If you're a world citizen, it's a moral and personal responsibility to actually look after the world in terms of the environment. And one of those things is stop burning fossil fuels.
What does the future hold for the energy scene in the Pacific Islands? Is there a ray of hope that will shine the way for more renewable energy in the future? A small number of Pacific Island governments have recognized the importance of renewable energy. Countries like Vanuatu, Kiribati, and Fiji have recently made policy statements declaring that their countries would become wholly renewable within only a few years. What's needed to convince more countries to make similar policy statements are simply successful working models.
Renewable energy could be the great hope for the Pacific Island. These countries have little industry, few commercially viable resources, and populations that, for the most part, are still struggling with raising the level of development in their countries. Greater reliance on renewable energy would lower the reliance of island countries on expensive fossil fuels for generating electricity. These renewable energy sources would also help keep island environments cleaner and less polluted. But this will be a challenge to develop cost-efficient renewable energy models that produce cheap, reliable energy with a minor environmental impact. It'll be a challenge to raise the awareness of the general public in island countries to support the development of these renewable projects. Only then can renewable energy truly be considered a ray of hope for the Pacific.
And renewable energy is a way for us to be able to use what we have, indigenous resources of energy we have in the region.
If you go to the future and look back, in 100 years, around the world, renewable energy sources have to be more used because conventional sources of energy will be running out.
I think one of the important ways in which we could address the increase in greenhouse gases is to go for renewable energy as much as we can and as quickly as we can.
It will improve the environmental conditions, it will improve the economies, it will increase the energy security and make them more energy self-sufficient, and it will be part of a path towards sustainable development.